Good morning and welcome to the Foster Swift Sports Talk podcast. I'm your host, Dave Russell. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Charlie Sarche and Tony Delamonte. Today we're joined by Jim Kielbaso and Collin McCracken from Impact Sports Performance. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. This place is awesome.
Yeah.
It really is.
We love the studio for sure. Jim, I'll start with you. So Jim is the owner and director of Impact Sports Performance. It's a training facility based in Novi. And then you guys have a few other locations as well. And
Yep, Brighton and East Lansing.
Brighton and East Lansing. Okay. And then you were the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Detroit Mercy from 96 to 2002. And then you're also the president and CEO of International Youth Conditioning Association as well, which where you educate coaches worldwide on developing youth athletes. Sound about right?
You got it.
Is there anything I left out? How did you get where you are today? Like, where did you start and how'd you get here?
Well, I went to Michigan State, and then I went to University of Michigan for grad school and got to work with their legendary strength coach, Mike Gittleson, who was really, really hard on me, but also taught me a lot. I've got lots of stories about some of the things he did to me.
Sure.
And then one of the professors there actually hired me to open up a place. It was a sports performance place. It would have been like 1995 when I didn't even know what that was. Make a long story short, ended up at Detroit Mercy, wanted to open my own place. Strength and conditioning at the time in the early 2000s was not even close to what it is now. People were not making money. I was the only strength coach on campus, teaching classes, all to make like $28,000 a year. Like, things have changed dramatically. And
so did you have all sports?
I had all sports.
Oh my God.
We didn't have football, so that was lucky. Yeah, if you want to talk about some crazy days.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, it was all sports. I had to do the conditioning also, and I had to like meet with people and teach classes, and not making fun of strength coaches today, but there's a lot of strength coaches that are like, I have men's and women's golf.
That's one workout today.
Yeah, and I mean, the value's there. Like, they're doing a lot more than I did, but yeah, it was a lot. So I got out of that and did private stuff starting in 2002, which at the time nobody was doing, or not nobody, but not many people were doing private strength and conditioning stuff. And I was doing a lot of speed work, ended up writing a couple of books on speed development. And I thought I was going to train all these basketball players because that's who I was training at Detroit Mercy. Their legendary basketball coach was from Detroit Southwestern. So like, I was training guys in the summer like Jalen Rose and Maurice Taylor, and all these guys were coming through Detroit. Well, it ended up, because I was doing speed work, football players wanted to come in and they wanted to get faster at 40s. So we started doing a lot of football and a lot of soccer because of the speed work. Ended up apparently Tony and I met at University of Michigan. University of Michigan hired me to do their NFL Combine prep for, I don't know, several years through a couple different coaches, which was an awesome experience. And then during COVID, we made a break from where we were and opened Impact, moved kind of down the street, ended up opening up 2 more locations, and that's where Collin came in, and that's where all of this led to.
We'll move over to Collin. So Collin, he's got
tough to follow up on.
Yeah.
I'm a little older, so
Collin's got his bachelor's of science in exercise science and minors in coaching and sports psychology. And then you were also an intern for the MSU football strength program as well, right?
Right. Yeah. So after I finished my last year at Trine University, I was lucky enough to get a spot at Michigan State with their football strength conditioning staff. So at the time, it was Jason Novak was the head strength conditioning coach, and Lorenzo Guess was the head associate strength coach at the time. And then Taylor Porter was on staff, who's now at Oregon, last time I checked. And then Joe Powell, who is still the assistant strength coach there. And then Paul Caprano, who is at Cal Berkeley with Jason Novak. So I had a lot of really great mentors there while I was.
What year was that?
So that would have been 2022 when I was there.
So I've got a question on strength and conditioning in general. So I was a college athlete. I would show up and the strength coaches would have the workout on the board, and they beat you up for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and then we would leave. But I know a lot more goes into it, a lot more of the planning. You're planning out either the preseason or if you're in season. So can you talk a little bit about like what that sort of back end looks like, and how you design these workouts and a plan for either a team or a particular athlete?
Well, in college, it's changed a lot from what I did. When I was doing it, it was one team after another, so there wasn't as much time to plan and to meet with people and do all these individual evaluations. Today, they do a lot of that. There's a lot more money in it. There's a lot more equipment. There's a lot more technology. So there's all sorts of testing and evaluation. They do a lot of meetings. Again, when I was doing strength and conditioning, strength coaches weren't going into team meetings all the time. Now, if you're the football strength coach, you're in every team meeting. So you're spending a ton of time, honestly, doing stuff that really you don't have to necessarily do to do your job, for the kids. But, that's where a lot of stuff comes from. They have a lot of staff meetings and ongoing education. But I've seen a lot more strength coaches kind of realize it used to be like they had to be there all the time. They called it guarding the weight room. So they were there, who could get there the earliest and who could stay the latest. Now strength coaches have kind of realized we don't have to burn ourselves out so fast. So there's a lot of strength coaches that, they have shorter days during certain times of the year, and then other times of the year they have to be there for every practice. And again, you can ask them, like, do they need to be there for every practice? Like, are they being utilized? Sometimes they are, with the injured guys. I'm sure that you saw strength coaches working with injured players, off on the side because they can't practice. And then other times you're there doing other things. You're picking things up, moving things around. So it's kind of like a utility player at some point.
Sure. So is Impact, do you mostly have high school athletes, or are you working with college athletes as well?
So we're kind of everything in between. So like, for instance, today I have a group that's going to be an 8-year-old in it, a 9-year-old in it. So that's like our youth group. And then we have all the way up until professional athletes. So that's like the group that Jim works with in the wintertime, like that we're preparing people to get to the NFL. So that's like kind of what I like the most about Impact, is on a day-to-day basis. I'm not just working with like just one group or one team or the same age or same gender. The example that I give to people that everyone asks, like, that's an intern, like, what does a day-to-day look like for you? I use a day that we have in January where in the morning we go train 35 usually NFL guys that are getting prepared for their draft day. So we're there for 3 hours, and then after I'm there, then I'll go over to our Brighton location and I train a few college athletes that are in the area, and then a few high school athletes that are in the area in Brighton, Heartland, Howell. And after that, I have my 8 and 9-year-old group. And then I finish off the day and I have my middle school group. That's 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. So in one day, I'm seeing somebody that could possibly be a first-round draft pick. And then at the end of the day, I have little Billy coming in who's never jumped, really doesn't know how to land, doesn't know how to fall, doesn't know how to run. But we're just trying to teach him to fall in love with strength conditioning and view it more as an enjoyable experience rather than viewing it as, I just want this to be super hard and just bury you every single time that you come into the weight room. So we get to work with a lot of different athletes, and that's what I like about it.
Sure. So for somebody that has never heard of a private performance coach, can you give us just a rundown of what kind of movements you're putting people through? What kind of exercises do you do at Impact? And is the work that you're doing an extension of what a strength coach would be putting athletes through at a college, or is it completely separate, or is there a little bit of balance in between?
It's kind of a collaboration or kind of a preparation for college, but a lot of kids don't have that. So if we're at a high school, like we're at Hazlitt High School, we're essentially their college strength coaches. Like we run a program similar to what a college strength coach or strength and conditioning program would be like, but we're more like teaching them the fundamentals versus at a college, you've got all the best athletes from every high school in America. They already know how to do everything. We're kind of laying the foundation for them. The private stuff is a little bit different because it's much more individualized. So in a group setting, you're kind of doing what everybody needs and kind of trying to get the best out of everybody, given the big disparity in athleticism and experiences. When we're doing individual things or small group, we can do an evaluation. So we start off with a comprehensive evaluation where we figure out exactly what they need. Does this person need to work on their running mechanics? And in their running mechanics. Is it their top end? Is it their acceleration? Do they need to work on reactive strength kind of performance stuff, or is it more just basic strength and mobility? So we figure out what they need, and then we create a program for them.
I have to imagine when you're going into the high schools, you're also training the coaches and their staff, because I don't think all of them, or a majority of them, really know that aspect.
Oh, 100%. That's a really sticky one. Sometimes it's very interesting. Like when you go up levels, the coaches in the NFL and the NBA know that they don't need to be the strength coach. They delegate things because they have other things to do. The lower you go, the more involved they seem to want to be, and that's great. But sometimes it'd be great it is great when they just say, "Here's the strength coach, just do what he or she wants you to do." Other times they have lots of opinions because they've watched TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. So it just depends on the coaches, and their level of support.
So you mentioned before we started recording about a program that you've got with Hazlitt High School. Is that what you guys do? Will you partner with high school football programs if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, so we're at several different high schools. Some of the schools are for specific sports or programs, and other schools it's the entire school that we train. And we have a couple situations where it's like somebody that's there dedicated all the time, and most of our other schools are somebody going there after school for a couple of hours.
Do you guys do anything with nutrition too, or is it just performance coaching?
So as strength and conditioning coaches, I guess is an important topic because you see a lot of this on Instagram and social media of people giving nutrition advice online, but they're not registered dietitians. So the only people that can actually sit down and write out, I want you to eat this at breakfast, this at dinner, and everything in between is a registered dietitian. So we have to walk a fine line with that because I can't go to an athlete and say, I want you to eat this, this, and that. So all we can do is give general nutrition advice of saying, hey, make sure you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, have high carbs, have high protein. But I can't sit down and write a full nutrition program because that's out of my scope, and that's left for a registered dietitian to do. So what we do is find someone in whatever local area that we are at that they can go to, just like a physical therapist. I can't diagnose somebody if they're having an injury. I have to send them to the nearest physical therapist to diagnose. So if somebody wants a meal plan, then I need to find the nearest registered dietitian to do that. But we can absolutely help them out of hey, I'm not feeling really good in my workout today. I don't know what's going on. Well, did you eat breakfast today? Mm-hmm. No, I didn't have breakfast. What'd you have at lunch? I had a bagel at lunch. Well, let's start trying to eat breakfast in the morning and have a protein and a carb. And then at lunch, have a protein and a carb, and make sure that we have fats throughout the day and a snack. Super general advice that a teacher would give or a parent would give. But we have to make sure that we stay away from writing full meal plans out.
Well, who was it? Was it Jameson Williams that liked to get a burger from McDonald's and put McFlurry on it?
Yeah, and Jameer Gibbs eats candy all the time.
Yeah.
But that's a really interesting topic that you brought up because our profession is not licensed. So you can get certified, and there are better certifications and better education. But if you have the ability to market and talk to people and sell yourself, you can you guys could all do what we're doing. The flip side would be we can't offer legal advice because that would be. You have to go through the process. But if it would be if you guys knew that I could just start offering legal advice, even though I'm not an attorney, and I have a huge Instagram following, you'd be like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But the people watching don't.
Right.
They literally have no idea what they're supposed to be looking for and who's good and who's bad. So it's pretty interesting.
Foster Swift Sports attorneys and performance coaches.
Yep.
Do you guys think?
I'm in. Let's do it.
So then when you're training someone for the combine, I'm assuming a huge component of that is the nutrition. Are you at that point bringing someone else in on that? Or are you just making recommendations and, with the caveat that, you're not licensed to do that?
Both. We bring somebody in, and then we also have meal plans set up for them so that they can just pick up the meals and not have to think about it too much. But those guys aren't eating great either. It's very, very interesting to see some of the stuff that they do and that they don't know how to do.
Sure.
Yeah. So I mentioned to Jim, I remember at Michigan, the seniors would get done with their season, and then all the guys who, had a chance at the next level would go to gym, and you'd see them in there, either in the weight room, on the bench press, or on the field doing speed work and, working on 40s. But I was always curious sort of what that process looked like. And I forget off the top of my head. So how much time do you have, assuming, you're not playing in the national championship, but end of the college football season, when's combines and pro days starting, and how much time do you have with those athletes to get them ready?
We usually start the training process at the beginning of the year, so first week of January. And then the combine's usually around the end of February, and pro days are in the middle of March. And the pro days are kind of staggered depending on how they set up the schedule. So we have anywhere from 7 to 12 weeks to do stuff with the guys. And each day is roughly 2 to 3 hours. And my typical schedule is 4 days a week. That's what I was doing with the guys at U of M too. So we have a decent amount of time, but it's not like they have, a whole year. And a lot of the guys come in with pre-existing injuries. Like when you saw Jehu, he was coming off of a PCL injury, and Mario Ojemudia, I think you were there. Like he had an Achilles injury, like that happened near the end of the season, and Jeremy Clark tore his ACL. So there's a lot of guys who go through this process and something happens, and it completely derails whatever was going on. Jake Butt was another one, who, that I remember I was there that day. You probably were too when it happened, and everybody kind of held their breath, like, "Oh my God, what just happened?"
I know.
And you start realizing, like, oh, stuff completely messes up guys' careers, and sometimes it's just luck.
Yeah. And I have to imagine there's a sort of human piece to that as well. Like Jake Butt was a projected first or second round. And I don't know how much he worked with you after, but are you helping them just mentally with, what the process is, talking to coaches, answering questions at the combine? How do you sort of tailor that to the particular athlete that you're working with?
Well, it just depends on the situation. And yeah, Jake is an awesome person. And I did work with him quite a bit, and just what a wonderful guy. And he's an awesome sports announcer. I think
he's pretty good.
I think he might be a better sports announcer than he was football player. He was a great football player. Like, I think he's really, really, really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of it is like mentoring these guys and talking them through what they need to be doing or not thinking about. I know that there are certain times where I'll give a little talk about something, or bring somebody in to talk about something. Maybe it's, hey, you have to decide. We always have this conversation somewhere in the middle of the process. You have to decide what you're going to be willing to do to make it to the NFL, because your process is not always going to be smooth. Not everybody gets drafted in the first round and everything's easy. Are you going to be willing to, get another job and keep going and play in a different league? And I always have stories of guys who have done some crazy things and ended up making it. And guys will say to me, like, that hit home. Like, really? that really hit home. Like, I went home and thought about it. And sometimes they're like, if I don't get drafted, like, I'm out. Like, I'll never play football again. Other guys are like, I'll do anything. I'll do this for years. So there is a lot of mentoring. And I would say the hardest part, and I just had a conversation with some guys the other day, is that you can tell guys, I mean, this is the same with going through law school and same with doing any job or being a parent. You can tell people what it might be like and like how hard something's going to be, but they don't get it until they're in the middle of it and it happened when they didn't get drafted, or they got drafted and then they got cut and they don't have another workout, and like the emotions that go from somebody, especially nowadays, making hundreds of $1,000s in college football or any sport, and everybody's kissing your butt, telling you you're going to be the next guy, and all of a sudden nothing. It is a devastating reality check for people, and we try to tell them, we try to explain, how hard things are going to be, but you don't know until you until you experience it.
Sure.
In terms of any exercises in the combine. I feel like I always throw on the combine and I'll watch the 40s, and the bench press are always kind of fun to watch. You're in the thick of it. What do NFL coaches actually care about?
That is a great question. That is a great question. And Collin, you can comment on it too, but each team has something a little different. Each team times differently. Like, I can't believe that at pro days they still do hand timing, and they will report one time to the NFL offices for everybody who wasn't there, and then they keep their own times. And sometimes I think that they're looking for testing numbers, and then I've had other scouts who have sat next to me and said, that guy, he's killing this day. He's probably not a good football player. And I think, what? And so some people think, like, if you're too good of a tester, you can't be a good football player. And then others think, like, you've got to test well in order to be able to play at the next level. And they're supposedly, or they're watching film and that they're talking to everybody, but my God, the number of misses, in the process, to me is kind of crazy. How many, how random it is sometimes. I don't know what you think, Collin.
Yeah, no, a lot of athletes ask us about that, like the high school athletes, like, because they know that we're training a lot of these guys, like, getting ready for the NFL, and they're like, so what do they actually, like, care about? Do they care about the 40? Do they care about this? And one of the funniest tests that I think is when we put a really big guy, like an offensive line, on the bench and do a 225 max reps and you see this guy put like 45, 50 reps out. Right. So as an NFL scout seeing that, they don't really get much out of that, of like, how powerful is he? How strong is he? Like, this guy got 45, he got 46. Do I really care about that? When we have so much technology now, where there's in every single Division I weight room now, there's Elite Form that tracks the speed of the bar and the power and the watts on each rep, where they could just put 315 or 405, how much they want to put on the bar, and then just see the power output. And that could be a test, rather than seeing how many reps of 225, 330-pound guy could put out. Right. And then I think there was actually a strength coach for the New Orleans Saints actually did a study on this, basically looking at all the tests of, like, what actually matters based off how you do in every single event. How does it actually play out in your career, of how many minutes you get or how many downs you get. And they found that the 40 didn't have a huge predictor of success in the NFL. They found that in the 10-yard split for, like, your first 0 to 10, that had a little bit more higher predictive success in the NFL, which makes sense since most plays are between 0 and 10 yards. There's not too many plays in an NFL game that are going 40, 50 yards every single play. So, and then the other one that he found some success in was the 5-10-5 at El Cone drill, which makes sense because it's change of direction, lateral movement. So those tests make more sense to NFL scouts with that data, that from what that strength coach found. But just like Jim said, every single scout's going to be different. Like, maybe one scout, they just need a burner on their team for a wideout. So, like, they really do want to get somebody that's really good 40 time. So there's a lot that goes into it, but yeah.
So do you guys, I mean, you obviously have a lot of experience watching the training, then watching the actual combine, seeing the numbers, and seeing how they perform later. I mean, do you have an opinion of, if you were the scout, what you would be looking at?
That's a really good question. I mean, they have to be able to play football. I would say you have to be, at certain positions, you have to be fast. But being fast doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be good at football. So you have to have kind of the combination of those things. I think some of the tests too, like the 5-10-5 drill, like, there's so much technique involved that like, we can help guys do better at it just by working on the steps and how to do it. I think it's more of like a composite score. Like, do you have power? Do you have speed? Do you have agility? How do you do your position drills? There's just a lot more. It's more comprehensive, I think, than just one thing. And I also think that there are lines in the sand for certain groups and certain positions. We had a kid who was an All-American safety who I think they ended up giving him like a 4.61 and they said, "Oh, you had to run a 4.60."
Oh my God.
And it's like, well, I mean, like that it's so subjective. That was hand timed. Like, I don't know. You might want to bring that guy in and see, see what he's like, or look at the injury history and stuff. There's just so many things, and there's no mental test. And you see, I would say most guys don't make it in the NFL. They're all physical freaks. Various degrees of freakiness. But mentally, like, can they pick up the playbook? Do they make the right decisions all the time? Are they going to get through the day consistently? Are they going to have off-field problems? Are they, there's just so many other factors that I think it's hard, to make that decision. And I honestly don't know how they make some of those decisions. Sometimes I look at some picks and it baffles me.
Yeah.
So what are you guys doing to actually improve their performance? This is probably harder to explain without, showing us the techniques and stuff that you teach. But I'm guessing you're not having these guys just, run a 40-yard dash over and over again until they're eventually faster. Like what goes into training somebody to actually improve their performance at the combine in some of these drills?
Yeah, so Jim's ran our combine program for a long time now. He's done a really good job of getting really good results for both the 5'10", 540 broad jump, and just testing well on all those tests, becoming more athletic. So the numbers are going to pop off the sheet a little bit better for some of the scouts, especially for some of our guys that aren't high-level D1 guys. We have a lot of D2 guys that are in our group that if they test really well, that's kind of like their make or break of if they run a really good 40 or 5'10", 5 at whatever their height, weight, and speed is. Scouts are going to see that and be like, man, who's this D2 guy? Let's look at a little bit more of his film. So that's a really big part for impact, is getting those guys those numbers, so then they actually have a chance in the league, because they don't have a lot of game film of playing against an SEC team or a Big Ten team. But you can talk a little bit about how you break down a week of acceleration, top end speed, and change the direction, since you programming it out.
Is this being video?
It is being video. Yeah, you're on video.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Charlie, do you have tennis shoes on?
Set up some cones.
That would actually be great.
We can do that. This table's big enough. We can get him in a 40 stance.
Alex, can we move the camera so we can do a 40 in here?
Charlie's getting very nervous right now. He's like, "Why me? Why me?" Tony knows me. There's a lot of mechanics involved in speed, and it's surprisingly. A lot of guys come in and they've never been taught any of that stuff. They just, they're good athletes. They're fast enough. And I'm not blaming anyone. At the college level, especially big time college football, there's too many people, not enough coaches to break things down super individually and spend a lot of time working on somebody's, small deficiencies. At this point, they're just going to recruit over you, unfortunately, rather than develop that person. So we spend a lot of time teaching them mechanics, steps, footwork, everything involved. And a lot of guys have really poor mechanics. They're working against themselves. They've succeeded despite the way they move, and we have to break a lot of those habits. And most of the guys are highly motivated at that point, because they're seeing like this is their opportunity. They have this small window to do something. So they're very, very motivated to get better. But yeah, we work on acceleration, we work on top end, we work on the agility drills, we work on power. We have to balance it so that we don't blow them out and have them so tired that they're either getting injured or they're not getting enough out of it. So it's kind of like a little science experiment. It's the one time in most athletes' careers where for about 2 to 3 months, they don't have to do a bunch of outside stuff. Most of them don't have classes, they don't have football practice, they don't have a lot of other things going on. So we can help them learn how to recover, how to eat better, how to not overtrain but train hard enough and get the most out of themselves. So we can get some pretty amazing results, but it's a short period of time, because as soon as that's over, and then they have to start getting ready to play football again.
I should have came to you. Probably could have increased my 40.
You would be in the NFL. For sure.
That's the only thing stopping.
You would be the answer to my next question, which is, what was your biggest success story?
That's what I was going to ask too. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, when you were there, Tony, at Michigan, Devin Funchess went somewhere else to do his training.
Okay.
And this actually has happened a lot for me in my career, where somebody will go do their training somewhere else, not have a good combine, and then they'll come back and they'll then kind of panic and be like, Jim, can you fix me? And Devin, I don't remember exactly. I think he ran like a 4.7 or something like that at the combine, and he was super bummed. And this is a good mental story. So I asked him, show me what you're doing. And he was just overthinking everything. And I had to say, like, dude, just be Devin Funchess. Just be an athlete. Stop thinking about this. Put your hand down, and like, all I want you to worry about is one thing. And it was like getting out on it, his first step. And I remember him doing it, and he came back, he turned around smiling. And I was like, how'd that feel? He's like, feel like an athlete. So and he ended up running, I think, a 4.4 at his pro day.
At the pro day, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
and one of the newspapers did a story on that because he was so pumped about it. Yep. And it's just a good example of, like, how do you get something out of somebody that it's in there, and what's stopping them. For him, it was just, it was mental. Other guys, it's physical. There's a kid named Troy Hairston who didn't get recruited by anybody, played at Central Michigan, had to switch positions, couldn't get the acceleration mechanics down, and was just so frustrated. And a couple weeks before, we just kept going, kept trying, kept working on it. He finally got it and had an amazing pro day. Ended up getting getting offers from multiple teams, and they switched him again to fullback from the defensive side of the ball. So stuff like that is pretty awesome to see when somebody just they put everything they have into it, that something finally clicks, and then it happens for them. That and another awesome process that I've been able to go through. Sorry that I'm monopolizing this.
No.
Is helping Aiden Hutchinson get back this year from his injury.
That was my question.
I was not alone in that. The Lions did an amazing job of that, but it was really cool to watch him come in. And a lot of that, again, is mental. Like, what can he push himself through, which he can push himself through pretty much anything. And being able to see him go from not being sure of, like, can I do this? Can I not do it? To then going full go and saying things like, I don't even think about it anymore. That was pretty fun process too.
I feel like he didn't really get to get unleashed against the Packers very much. He was double teamed quite a bit.
For sure. Yeah. There's plenty more football to be played for him, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Is there a mistake that athletes make, or maybe not a mistake, but just something that you're not a fan of in this really critical 12-week period as someone's trying to get ready for a combine or a pro day?
Just like any athletes, like, distractions happen. So a lot of times athletes in general are trying to do too much too soon. So I work, even high school athletes, like, I got a combine in a week. Like, I'm doing this, and that this whole week. So, like, they're doing like 4 or 5 hours of things every single day, like, outside of training with me, where then they go to their combine day and they run a really bad 40. They have a really bad jump. And it was like, well, this whole week you did way too much, way too soon, that you couldn't perform well. So I see that a lot, that people are just doing way too much too soon for athletes in general. What are some things that you see from some of the combine guys, Jim?
I see a lot of guys who, they don't know what they don't know, so they pick a place to go to that's essentially mixing a vacation with their training. And
I remember seeing guys out in like a beautiful California gym that's like overlooking the water, and I don't want to call any names, but
Very specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll never know who you're talking about. Don't worry about it.
No. Yeah, and okay, some guys don't need to worry about the combine. I get that. Like, some guys are going to be high round draft picks, but we see it all the time. A guy has a great combine or a great pro day, and it elevates him. And if it's a bad one, you may never hear about that guy again. And I just think a lot of people get kind of caught up in having special stuff and social media. Like, they want to post, they want, to be the center of attention and be pampered, rather than like doing what they know they need to do, which is going to be focus on training, train really hard, recover by getting rest. Like, you don't have to get, massages twice a day and, and have everything lined up for you. Like, that's not how life is going to be. Like, get after it. And a lot of guys just don't. And sometimes I think the trainers just don't know any better. They haven't done it. Sometimes they are really worried about injuring somebody, because the last thing you want is to have a guy get hurt during training. But that happens. It happens all the time. I see it all the time. People doing stupid stuff. There's also a lot of people, like I said earlier, who they don't really have the qualifications. Maybe they just happen to be really fast growing up, and now they're telling people how to be fast. And I'll watch their videos and I'm thinking, this person has no idea how to teach this. Yeah, you're really fast, but you don't know why you're fast. So there's a lot of mistakes, I guess.
Sure. You talked about the mental aspect of it a little bit earlier. Is there something in particular that you do with individual athletes to work on the mental side of things?
One thing that I try to help out athletes with, especially I work with a ton of high school athletes, so obviously they have so many stresses like in their everyday life that I just try to help them control all the controllables in every single day. So the things that we can control is what we're putting in our bodies for our nutrition, what we're doing for our sleep, so if we're getting enough sleep, and then if we're doing what we should be doing in the weight room and training for our sport. And those are really like the three main things that if you do correctly, you control everything that you can control. And it's usually stuff within that athletes are getting really stressed out about, that like they're not getting enough sleep. So then they're a little bit more cranky when someone tells them whatever on their sport team, or they're not eating enough. So they're not getting the most out of their training. They're not getting the most out of the weight room. So then they're getting frustrated that they're not seeing the performance increases that they want. So just trying to help them out with, like, I had an athlete the other day, like his bench press has been like stagnant, and I was like, and he got super frustrated. I'm like, well, what's been going on? And we started figuring out that he hasn't been eating breakfast, and he usually doesn't eat lunch either at school. So I'm like, let's start there. And then like the other day, then he hit bench rep max just from eating breakfast and eating lunch. So like that right there was just one thing that we could control. So then that was one mental thing that's off his plate now, that he's like, man, like I'm really trying to get my bench press up, but I can't. So just trying to help them through things that we can control by eating right, sleeping right, and training right.
Yeah, I love having like one-on-one conversations with guys where you can see like there's some sort of mental block going on, or there's too much pressure, or there's outside stuff happening, and it's cool to see like kind of weight come off of somebody when someone is able to explain to them like, hey, don't worry about just this. Like you've got a lot of other things going, like you're going to make it through, and whatever it is, it's all individualized conversations, but I love those one-on-one things where you can just tell from seeing it, from other guys, like something's happening here, like Devin, like I was talking about.
Yeah. You guys were both strength coaches. Do you have a favorite finisher in a workout? So I remember turning the corner in Schembeckler Hall, and I would always pray that sleds were not on the field. And or like Jim Plocky at Michigan loved pull-ups on command, and he'd hold you you're hanging on the pull-up bar for 30 seconds before he calls you up. Do you have a favorite one that you'd like to pull out?
My favorite one, so we have a really cool treadmill that is at both our Brighton and Novi location. So this treadmill can go all the way up to 30 degrees in incline, and it can go as fast as we want. So it goes all the way up to 30 miles per hour. So however fast the athlete can go, we can put it up to. So for usually a finisher, I'll put athletes at a really high incline, like 25 incline, going for 20 seconds. And then they usually partner up with whoever they're with, and we'll go, I go, you go. So one athlete will go 20 seconds on the treadmill, then the other athlete will go on the treadmill, and then we have a sled that's right next to it. So then one will go down and back 30 yards, then the other one will go back 30 yards. So then like they'll try to compete with like who can go faster on the treadmill, who can do more weight. So it makes it competitive, but then it's also like after we do 3 rounds, they're both usually like on the ground, like by the fan for like 20 minutes and like can't do anything. So then we usually can't lift after that because like it's just like a brutal finisher. But that's a really fun one that we like doing.
I love the treadmills too, but something else came to mind was a manual resistance squat. Who I don't know if maybe Plocky did that with you. Basically, you do something really hard with your legs, and then a coach provides resistance,
Oh my
going
God.
down really slow and coming up really slow, and you get to the point where you literally can't stand up.
Oh my God.
And then the coach can kind of pick you up, and you can do a couple negatives and you fall over. And Mike Gittleson completely embarrassed me doing that in front of a class.
I'm sure.
And it's just the weirdest feeling. So I save that for special time sometimes.
All right, Charlie, let's go.
Yeah, we can do that right here.
Test it out. I was gonna say that's what I picture Dave and Coach Jake Boss doing in the morning when they're working out.
We don't do that. We're like old school. Like I tell Abby and Reagan what I do for a workout, and they're like, "Oh, you can't still be doing that." I'm like, "It's worked all these years."
And look how great I look.
Yeah, I'm 52. There's not much help.
So one thing I'm wondering, is there anything about a college program that, or whether you want to call out specific programs or not, I'll leave it up to you. But is there anything about college programs that really prepare or really produce like a well-prepared athlete for the NFL Combine? Like what should recruits be looking for when they're picking out a school, I guess, and they're touring the strength, or like talking to the strength coaches, looking at the facilities, stuff like that?
Yeah. So when I was at Michigan State, when we would put together like our PowerPoint for all the recruits that would come in, a big part that we would do is put everyone's numbers from when they got there as a freshman until they got through as a senior, from their speed, their agility, their strength, their power output. We would take before and after pictures every 6 months, so then you can see like the body composition as well. So we would put this all together so you can kind of see from like all the years before, all the athletes before you can see, okay, this is how much faster I can probably predict I'm going to get. This is how much better my power output is. Look at this guy. He came in at 160 and he's a corner and he's 185 and he's ripped now and way faster. His power output's way better. So when you see that from programs that take the time to show this is how we develop athletes, I think that's the number one thing that you can look for, because you know that they're going to take the time for each individual athlete because they want what's best for you, because ultimately it is our job. So like if I don't do that, if I don't get you faster, I don't get you stronger, more powerful, then I'm not doing my job correctly. But you have to show the results that you're getting. And if you're not seeing that from a program, then you're probably not going to a staff that cares about your development, or at least isn't doing their job the way that they should be. But every staff that I've ever at Michigan State, they did a great job under Jason Novak. I haven't heard of any like staffs that haven't done a good job of doing that. I don't know if you know of any that haven't done that. But yeah, I think just looking at progress as you're going to go through college.
Yeah, development, I think, is kind of the key. And that's not, unfortunately, what most people are looking for these days. They have more questions about, like, what kind of recovery stuff do you have here? And what does the locker room look like? And of course, now it's like, and how much money is there? And when am I going to play? There's not as much focus on development. I think people are trying to have instant success. They want to microwave the process instead of slow cook it. And unfortunately, people just don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that, like, this is going to take you a few years and it's going to be really hard, but the payoff's going to be there. They kind of want to hear, like, we're going to make you a pro tomorrow, and they want those kind of false promises. So I think, people need to hear some truth sometimes, that it's going to be hard and you're going to get better as a result of it. That's what I would look for, but I don't know. I don't think people want to hear that as much anymore.
Yeah.
Do you have advice for high school athletes that are looking to get recruited? What should they be doing now? Best practices.
Yeah, I think that honestly, the number one, not trying to be biased, is trying to get into a weight room and consult a professional for speed and agility. I think way too many athletes are undeveloped going into college. Speaking from personal experience, I played college basketball, and like a lot of basketball players, I didn't find a weight room till I got to college. And so that found me on the reserve team, and that found me like not playing at all because I just wasn't college ready. Especially I played during the time of the transfer portal. So when I went in there was 3 people that got recruited over me because they were all, 22, 23 years old that been in a weight room for the last 4 years and have developed. So they were college ready, and they were grown men playing against a 19-year-old that, was 165 pounds and was just learning how to lift weights. So I had to spend my first 2 years just learning how to lift weights and put any size on before I was even physically ready to play at the college level. So I've found that working with the athletes that started working with us, like when they're a freshman, sophomore, they're already physically ready for the college level by the time they are 18, 19 years old, rather than seeing athletes that, they get to us like their freshman year of college and they didn't really do anything before that. Then they have to play catch up their first couple years, especially with the transfer portal now. Like there's people that are like as old as me that are playing college sports right now that have been in a weight room the last like 6 years. So I would think just getting into the weight room, finding a strength conditioning coach to get them physically prepared.
Yeah, and different sports have different recruiting processes. Just like your daughter probably plays some sort of travel lacrosse, yes. And that's probably where she got recruited. She probably had to go out east to different tournaments. Right. Whereas in soccer, it's gonna be a different process where you still need to be part of a really good club, but it's not that you don't have to necessarily go out east. They have different showcases, and basketball is more of the AAU circuit. Football is still a lot of high school stuff and camps and performing at certain showcases. Some of the 7-on-7 stuff for certain positions is important. But I would say a lot of the recruiting for certain sports now happens in their club seasons, and having the good advice and good training to get better at your sport so you can make a good team, and then committing to like, okay, I got to go to these tournaments. I have to go to these showcases. It's a massive commitment on parents' parts now, so much so that it kind of deselects a lot of kids, not just from the financial aspect, but the time aspect. If you don't have a job where you can travel every weekend, or one of the parents can get you there, you're just not going to get in the club at an early age because you can't make that commitment, and then it's a lot more difficult later on to get into that organization later. So, I hate seeing people quit sports at an early age, but 13 to 14 years old is when about 70% of people quit sports because it stops being fun, and that is where people whose families can support that and can travel all over the place and put all their resources into it. That's where they kind of get ahead. So like I've asked NFL guys, what are you willing to do to get there? You almost have to ask the family and the parents, what are you willing to do this? And is the payoff there? Is the payoff enough that you want to do this and that you're going to see it through? Or is it okay to just enjoy sports and have a great high school experience and then go to college, and that's okay too, which people think it's crazy that I do what I do and then I say that, but I mean, I think it's totally fine. If you don't want to do all that it's okay. You don't have to play college sports and be a professional athlete.
Sure. One thing to add to that for the recruiting process is not most athletes aren't 5-star recruits and being recruited by these huge Big Ten SEC schools. Majority of kids that are going to play college basketball, college football, college soccer are getting recruited by schools that they don't know what your name is. They don't know you're not a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star athlete. So getting in contact with schools is a really big way to get your name out there, of actually emailing a coach, which seems like most athletes aren't doing that. They're just making like huddle highlights and putting it out on Twitter and expecting like a coach to just send them an offer in their DMs, rather than emailing a coach, here's what my height, weight, here's all my testing numbers are, here's what my grade point average is, here's my stats from the year. So then they can, one, know that you're recruitable with your GPA, and then they can then have a relationship with you and find a game that they can go to, rather than you just putting your highlights out there. College coaches don't know who's recruiting you. They don't know if you want to even go to your school, because that's a really big part of it. College coaches need to know that you're interested in their school as well. Like a kid might not want to go play for your school, so why should I waste my time out of my day to recruit this kid? So if I know this kid's emailing me and he's showing interest, then that makes me want to go recruit him. So I try to encourage a lot of my kids that work with me to not just it's great to make your, huddle highlights and making your recruit page, but also to like directly contact the schools that you can actually go play at. Because if you're not a Division I kid, then you shouldn't be contacting, Big Ten SEC schools. If you're a Division III NAI D2 kid, go after the schools that can recruit you. Like if you're more of a D2 kid, email Ferris State, email Grand Valley. You shouldn't be, emailing Alabama if you can't play there. So going after the schools that that you can play at is going to help you a lot in the long run.
Sure.
Yeah, if you're going into your senior year and you don't have Power 5 offers or any interest, like it's probably not going to happen. Like that happened before that. So talk to your coach, and try to have an honest conversation about where you might fit in, and then reach out to some of those schools.
Sure.
One of the things I remember Coach Harbaugh saying, kind of related to the combine prep, was that he would see guys who wouldn't take sort of college football seriously for 4 years. They weren't really serious in the weight room. I don't know how much playing time they would get, but then when the season would be over, that combine prep was the most important thing in the world to them, and they all of a sudden become way more dedicated to the sport during that 12-week period. And that kind of puzzled Coach Harbaugh, because he was like, "This is what matters, the film." Have you experienced that at all?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like it seems like all the time I'll get to a pro day and somebody will look amazing and perform amazing, and a coach will say to me, like, "Where's this been?" And I don't know what to say, because I don't know what happened, and I don't know how they were being trained, or how they were, taking it, or how hard they were working, or sometimes, like, I don't know if every coach believes in a kid and puts that dream mentality in, that you have to give it everything you've got. There's so many factors, but yeah, I hear it all the time. Like, where has this been? We didn't know that this kid could look this good, or move this well. Well, motivation's a pretty magical thing.
Right.
Yeah. A last question for me, just as a fan, what Lions players have you guys worked with? Are you currently working with? And how's that going?
Well, it was kind of a bummer preseason. We had, I think, 8 guys that were there in camp, and 3 or 4 of them ended up making it. I hate watching guys get cut, and having those dreams kind of shattered, and then seeing, like, okay, what's next? Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson is super fun to work with, but I would say, like, the underdog guy that I have just really loved working with on the Lions is Trevor Nowaski, linebacker from Saginaw Valley, and he's actually from down the street from where I live, and he's just one of those guys who did everything you're supposed to do. He's freaky, just put the work in, and like a lot of guys in the NFL, something happened, got a shot, and he made the most of it, and and performed well. So, like, other guys, they get their shot, something happens, somebody goes down, they go in and they screw it up, and that's the end of their career. But Trevor's just kind of been awesome, and just a good person, willing to help people out all the time. So he's a super fun one.
Yeah.
Where can people reach you at?
For social media, we have our main Impact Sports Performance page, and then we have our Impact Brighton page, and then we have our Impact East Lansing page. And then my email is my name, just Collin McCracken, just my first name, Collin @impactsportsperformance.com. And then my Instagram is just my first name and last name.
Yeah, everybody that works for us, it's impact-sportsperformance.com, and then our first names probably before, and then because nobody else wants Jim Kielbaso to be their Instagram tag or anything, I get to have that for all my social media. I get my regular name for everything all the time.
That's awesome.
All right, well, we'll have to have you back on as we get ready for combine prep, and maybe put Charlie through some drills.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
Yeah. Do an outdoor.
You guys can take a little field trip.
Yeah,
Yep.
we can take it on the road. We were at Spartan Stadium this last Saturday, so
Nice.
we can do that. Maybe we'll come watch it. So,
That'd be fun.
but thanks so much for coming on. This was great information, and really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having
Thanks,
us on.
guys. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.